It's me, Capri. My mommy is the best. Super mom will be next. She helps mommy get those smiles back. To get those back. And this part go back. You wait for the show. Brush. Get ready for that super slippery. That super slap.
Welcome to my Global Healing for the Soul podcast, sponsored by myself, Robin Stoltman, as I am America's #1 fertility and parenting mindset expert, a transformational resilience speaker, a coach and trainer for businesses and individuals. I'm also an author and a supermom of 11 biological children with 8 C-sections in a row after overcoming infertility that I had for over 5 years using my Fertility Mindset Revolution program I created, with this being season number 6, episode number 32, where every week I feature different guests to help you become the best version of yourself through different methods you may not have heard of or even thought of. So be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Healing for the Soul podcast and keep coming back for more. Now today, I have somebody on my show who's absolutely amazing, like I do with all my guests, but this one has met my childhood dream that I wanted to be just like. So his name is Kent Maxson, Max to his friends, and is an award-winning songwriter. His music has been performed on international radio and TV, and he has won multiple industry awards, including an RIAA Gold record for his hit single, From Where I'm Sitting, which he wrote with Garth Brooks and was recorded by Gary Allan. Artists who have most recently recorded Kent's song include CMA Texas Country Artist of the Year, Will Bannister, multi-platinum award-winning songwriter / artist Buddy Monlock, an Irish songstress Mary Duff, Irish traditional country artist Jordan Mogi, and rising young country artist Alyssa Tarrant. Kent keeps busy touring schedule, performing at house concerts and small venues throughout the South while writing and mentoring young artists on the craft of songwriting. Kent released his latest EP, Max, in November 2019. His memoir, No Way Out But Through, a songwriter's slow, blind journey from chaos to clarity, was released in April of 2025. Kent currently lives in Nashville with his wife, Cindy. So thank you so much, Kent, for being here today. I really appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to it. It's good to meet you finally.
Well, yes, same here. So one of the questions that I have is, what inspired you to become an award-winning songwriter?
Well, first, I didn't aspire to be award-winning. I aspired to be a songwriter. And I actually started writing songs, it's hard to believe for most people, when I was 5 years old. Now, I didn't write them down or anything, but I can remember walking down the street and making up songs as I walked along. And songwriting for me has always been a way to express what's inside my heart. I was in situations where I was kind of shy, and you just didn't express everything you felt in public. You know, a child was to be seen, not heard, or heard, not seen, not heard, excuse me. So, you know, I'd sit in the background, but the emotions that were inside me had to come out some way. And so I went and started banging on the piano, and haven't stopped since.
I love that, because I'm like thinking to myself, like right now, I'm like, I've had that experience. Like when I was a kid, I would write songs just to write them, but I didn't do anything with them. I just wrote them down. But so you played piano then when you were 5, or like when did you start?
Well, my mom would not let me take piano lessons till I was 7. And so, but we had a piano and I was allowed to go bang on it. So I went up there and I found these notes in this order were happy. These notes were sad. So I got to play it starting at 5, but my lessons started when I was 7.
I love that. That's awesome. Because that's a good thing to allow a person to start playing piano when they're younger. Because like my son, he's 7 and he's learning how to play piano because he wanted to learn. And I told him, I said, that was like the best thing he's ever asked me, outside telling me that he loves me. I'm like, that was my mama's heart wish. I'm like, yes, he's carrying on the music, and he's got the ability to sing and stay in tune while playing piano.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't have that gift yet. But I'm glad that he's got that gift. I think it's a great thing. So how did you know, did you know that you wanted to be a songwriter at 5? It sounds like, or?
Yeah, I didn't really know that that was a profession or something you could do, but about the time I got into third and fourth grade, I started reading, we were allowed to go to the library, and I started reading biographies of different people, and I came across, I don't know what was first, Mozart, Beethoven, or somebody, and it just hit me that I'd been making up songs anyway. You mean you can do this as a living? So that's when I started the quest.
Wow. That's awesome. This is very insightful because I'm thinking about, like I said, with my own son, being able to help him, to keep him on that right path. Because I think that's something that all parents want to do, is encourage their children to follow on the path that is for them. Not necessarily for us parents all the time, but at least for me, that's where I've noticed. I'm like, I want to help my child grow. And it sounds like your parents helped you grow in the area that you were really good at. You know, like when you were younger, like when they started seeing those gifts.
Yeah, I think that there's a line that you have to be aware of discipline versus crushing. I don't know I'm going to go there. So there was a study that talked about, and they went and measured kids at a very early age, like 1 and 2, and I don't know how they did it, but their creativity. And they found out that like 90% of the kids had this creativity in them. And then they measured these kids and followed them like every 2 years. And by the time they got to, it was either 18 or 20, they only had like 20 to 25% that they would call creative. And so their theory was that the school systems, we talk about reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, the arts are being taken out of schools. And so they've crushed creativity. You're taught to conform. You're taught to be in this mold. And there are rules to society that you do need to play, but this creativity is in all of us. We've just ignored it for so long.
And I would agree with you, and I'm glad that you had mentioned about like that for the schools, because I remember even when I was in school back, when I graduated in 2004, I remember that they were talking about decreasing like the band and the arts. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not a good thing. Because like even back then, I'm like, how are we supposed to get our creativity out?
Yeah, the arts are an extension of your spirit, of your soul, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with you very much, because I know like even recently I thought about going back to poetry writing, because that's part of that songwriting that I would do. And like I felt better when I was doing that, because I like AI, but I don't like it because it misses that human experience in it.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the part that I think makes it more challenging. So then I'm thinking now too, like, how did you meet Garth Brooks? Because I'm just like, he's been one that I'm like, since I was a kid, I'm like, I've wanted to be like how he performs, how he does things. And then I just remembered this out of the blue, that I remembered on like one of the documentaries that he had or something about how he had brushed his teeth for like 3 hours in a row, something like that. I didn't know if some of that stuff's true or if that's just my memories just like going all together, but I just want to know, like, how did you meet him? How did that happen for you?
I'm glad you asked that. I'm going to give you a long-winded answer, because that is actually one of the chapters in my book, because no one would know who I am at all if it weren't for, this taking place. I'm going to tell it in 2 parts. So I was working in a store called Circuit City. I don't know if you remember them, selling electronics. And the store I was at was in a part of town where we would have vagrants, hobos coming in. And my boss didn't want people in there like that because it destroyed the business. So anytime someone came in that was one of these hobos, for lack of a better word, I was assigned the task to get him out of there, because I'm 6'7" and kind of big, and the people are afraid of me, whether they need to be or not. So there's this one guy that came in. He was filthy, wet, dirty sweats, hadn't washed or bathed probably and looked like in a week. So they sent me over to get him, and he was at this end cap, and as I got closer to him, he looked familiar. And I said, "Do I know you?" He said, "Randall Tex Cobb, damn glad to meet you." Now, I don't know if you know who he is, but he was an actor, and he was a boxer who fought for the heavyweight champion of the world. Didn't win, he got beat up. But so we started talking. He was originally from Abilene, Texas, and I grew up in Texas, and my parents lived in Abilene for a while. And so he said, "Well, what's a Texas boy like you doing out here?" And I said, "Well, I'm one of those songwriters." "You are?" Well, my wife's a songwriter. And so across the store was his wife. He takes me over to meet her. And we started talking, and then I ended up selling a stereo. And they said, well, we'll buy it if you'll come and put it together. And I said, well, I'll come put it together if you'll listen to my songs. Okay. So I come over, I put the stereo together, and I pop in my cassette, and they listen. And she goes, you're pretty good. You need to call ASCAP and ask to speak to Bob. I said, okay. So I called ASCAP and I said, I need to speak to Bob. They said, well, he doesn't work here anymore, but since you're a friend of Randall and Sharon's, here's his number. So I call up Bob and I say, I'm a songwriter. Randall and Sharon told me to contact you. He says, well, I don't do that anymore, but since you're a friend of Randall and Sharon's, come on in and I'll listen. I said, okay. So I go in to meet him and talk to him, and I play him my songs. He says, you're pretty good. I left ASCAP to manage this new artist. I think y'all might write some good songs together. And that was Garth. Now that's half the story. And no one knew who he was at the time. He hadn't signed his deal. The rest of the story for me is, I grew up in Texas, and I went to college at Texas Tech in Lubbock. And I had a girlfriend, and we split up. And I don't know, a couple months later, I called her and said, is there a chance we'll get back together again? And she said, no. Why don't you go to Nashville? You've always wanted to write songs there. I said, okay. So I was in a group. I promised them that I would finish the album we were working on, and I'd finish the dates that we had booked. So the very last show that I was going to do with them, September 18th, 1983, and I know this because it was the day before my birthday, and the next day I was leaving for Nashville. So I was on stage singing, and my ex-girlfriend came in with a guy I'd lived with for a while, a roommate. And they went on the very front row, and she sat in his lap and started kissing and hugging on him. So I'm up on stage singing, and I said, I'm up here dying, and you're standing down there acting like a fool. And that just stuck with me forever. So I went to Nashville, moved along, and after I met Garth, by that time, this phrase had morphed a lot of different ways. And the second time we wrote a song, I brought in what we call the hook, or the idea, which was, from where I'm sitting, I can see where we stand. And so we wrote that song, and that's the one that Gary Allan recorded and got me the gold record. Now, the moral of this story is we think miracles are an instantaneous event, water into wine or something like that. Sometimes, and I would say most of the time, God is working in the shadows, things that we don't even realize. How was I to know back in Lubbock in 1983 and 1987 that I was going to be writing with Garth Brooks, who was going to become this star, and this song that was built out of that was going to be the one that launched me on my way.
You wouldn't have known that at all.
God works in the shadows.
He definitely does. 100% of the time is what I have found. He doesn't let a person know ahead of time. It'd be nice if he would, but in the same time, I look back at all the things and I'm like, I'm glad I did not know. Oh, that's why the song I was telling you about ahead of time about for the dance, I think that's where I resonate with that, because I remember one of the parts in that song, the dance with Garth Brooks, is, I'm glad I didn't know the way that things would go.
Yeah. He made it a big hit. He does it like no one else, but that also comes into the songwriter. He didn't write that. That was written by Tony Arata.
Okay.
And songwriters are kind of the people behind, they're the ones that create the magic. Others take it and they add their own little magic. But the heart and soul is really usually, and Garth does songwriting, but is in these writers that no one ever heard of.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering too, like, how does that work? Like, you have like your song that you've created, and then the singer is the one singing. They're the ones that are getting famous from the songs that you've wrote. But it's like, how does that, I don't know how to word that for like the question of like, how does that work? Like when your song, it's like it's coming to life through someone else.
It takes different forms of life as you go along. There's the embryo, and then there's this chaos that you're pulling out of I cannot tell you how many times we've gone over a line and changed the word here, because it changes the entire meaning of that line. And when you do that, it changes the whole song. So, I do not want to disparage any artist. They bring something to it too. I mean, someone like Garth, Gary, and them, when they listen to songs, they get flooded with hundreds and hundreds and thousands of songs. You know, someone trying to make it big, or someone who has this great song. And as they listen through them, they have to connect on some level. And so it is an extension of that. And if they connect, like you just mentioned the dance, I could tell you a whole story on that one. But when they connect, then there's another level of magic.
Now I want to hear about the dance. Because I remember like one of the songs he had the Oklahoma City bombing in his music video. And I don't remember if that was I don't think that was the dance. I think it was another song.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget that video because the way it lined up. I'm like, I see these people that are so talented that have these amazing gifts of how they're able to place the music in the right spot with the right wording, with the right scene in their videos. And I'm just like, I'm in awe. So I love watching because I love learning. So how does that work with the dance then? Now I'm curious about that song.
Well, the song was written, as I said, by Tony Arata. And Garth was there's a place called the Bluebird where the songwriters get up and play their songs. And Tony played the dance. And Garth said he looked around and people were talking and doing this. He says, do you not see the magic? Do you not hear the magic in this? So on his first album, he recorded it. Now they released 2 songs before that one. And he wanted to release a third. And the label said, no, that's it. We're not going to release a third song. We're going to work on the next one, which ended up being No Fences. And Garth kept pushing them. So finally they said, okay, you can do a music video. And when he did the video, the song exploded. And the album went from like, 500,000 to I've forgotten how many million, because that song connected and Garth knew it connected and Garth connected with the song. So there's a lot of different things that go into magic.
I would agree with you, especially like that connection point of the songwriting and all of that. And then I know a little bit you had said about like Garth isn't any different than you or I. So I was wondering like because I know like there's so many people that seem to put other people up on a pedestal. And I'm like, I've been around other people who are famous, or at least they're famous to me, like John C. Maxwell. I've been around him, around Ryan Leake. I've been around and Tim Tebow. I've been around some of these people just for like a brief time. So to me, I'm like, I'm starting to realize that they're no different. But it's like, what is your take on like, how is Garth like us?
Puts on his pants every day, same as us. He eats the same as us. He hasn't let the fame go to his head, which is a miracle. I mean, I can remember us when we first started writing. We were in this rundown house that Music Row at the time was just nothing but old houses, and so we were sitting in the kitchen looking out over a dusty alley. A glass of water and the table was dirty and wobbly. And I don't think he's ever forgot that. I mean, no matter, I guess because I'm not famous and I don't know if I really want to be. You can get jaded. You can but start believing your own press, or you can try to hold on to the thing that made you. And I don't want to speak for Garth on anything. He's his own man, and I'm just fortunate that I know him. And from my point of view, he's the same guy that I met in 1987.
No, and I don't blame you for not wanting to not speak for him. So no, I appreciate that, but I'm just saying like, it's good to know that he's still that same person, because I know like that's one of the fears that I've always had.
Yeah, is
I don't want to become someone who's famous just for it to all go to my head and then never still remember where I came from. Then it sounds like Garth does, like Garth still remembers where he came from.
My experiences with him, yes.
That's awesome. Because I know like that's, like I said, I think that's, I don't know if sometimes that fear holds other people back too. I mean, like in a way, like when they're thinking about, or if they even think about like for being famous long term, of how they want to show up, who they want to become.
I don't know. I don't think, well, you write songs, maybe some do, but you don't write songs to be famous. You write songs because you have something that's burning up inside of you. I think that when you find the gifts that God gave you, and we recognize some gifts more than we do others. I mean, what do you think about the person who goes out and feeds the homeless people under a bridge? They don't get the recognition, but they're just as valuable, if not more valuable. And no one's more valuable, but they have their place in the earth. We all do. You have a gift. You've been given a platform. We all have our opportunities, and our audience may be one, and our audience may be millions, but we have an obligation to use whatever gifts God has given us.
I love that. Sounds like you're speaking directly to me. You're using God's like speaking directly to me, and I appreciate that very much, because I know sometimes in life I've always wondered, or have you ever wondered, like through your own trials, or if you've experienced trauma, wanting to know where God is?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because this really is why the book exists. So if you'll give me again the leeway to tell kind of a long story. They say that the 5 most traumatic things a person can go through life are: 1, the death of a loved one; 2, a medical situation or emergency; 3, a divorce; 4, the loss of a job; and 5, to sell a home or move. In 1983, I did 4 of the 5. So in February of that year, they rushed me to the hospital with chest pains. And I go into the room, they do their checkup, and they put me into the emergency room immediately. And I remember as they were putting me under, it's like, God, let me wake up. So when I came out, they told me that I had 2 conditions. One of them was pericarditis, and the other one was AFib. So over the next 4 to 5 months, I was in and out of hospitals and clinics getting tested, x-rayed, MRIs, trying to get my heart shocked in. Nothing worked. So they decided that I needed 2 heart ablation surgeries, one hot, one cold. So in the beginning of August, I had the first surgery. And when I came out, within a couple of days, my ex-wife told me that she was thinking about getting a divorce. So that kind of hit me. And like 2 or 3 days later, it was the weekend, my boss called me and said, the company I was working for was going out of business. And my last day of insurance was going to be the day before my surgery. So I talked to the doctors, and they moved it where it was the day before my insurance ran out. So my wife and I were going to counseling, and then on November 20th, she told me she wanted the divorce. And I walked out of that house that day. So when I started this thing, I was in a fog, and I don't really remember much about the next 6 to 8 weeks, but I knew that there's nothing for me in the town I lived in, and something just told me, Nashville. It was just kind of like this deep longing, because I never wanted to leave in the first place. So I moved back to Nashville, and my roommates that I'd had 30 years ago had bought houses side by side, and one of them rented me a room, $50 a month, and then they helped me move my stuff into a storage. And I can remember going to bed at night and lifting my arms towards the ceiling and feeling like my prayers stopped there. They didn't go out of that room. So for me, when I was going through the divorce, there's things during the day that can distract you. You can talk to people, you go get a burger, you can go to a Starbucks, whatever. But at night, you're just by yourself. And it's the loneliest, most deserted feeling that I've ever had. So I would get up, because I couldn't sleep. I'd, 10, 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go walking in the night. Now, if you've been to Nashville, they don't have sidewalks, just blacktop roads and trees and things. But I would usually end up at the local school walking or running around this track until I couldn't walk or run anymore. And then I'd wander back towards the house. And at that time of night, the things that you would hear would be like critters in the leaves, streetlights humming, or crickets. So little by little over the next couple of years, a lot of things happened, and I started to heal. So some publishers had heard I was back in town, so they started setting me up with some young kids to teach them how to write. One day I was writing with this very talented young lady, and she had told me that she had pitched a song to a very famous artist. And I said, well, what did you hear? And she said, crickets. I'd never heard that before, that saying. And I asked her to explain. She told me, and as soon as she said it, I knew I had a song to describe what I went through. If you go to the Bible, it talks about a prophet was in this cave and God wasn't in the thunder. God wasn't in this. He wasn't in that. He was that still small voice. And so for me, crickets represented that small voice. The very thing I thought was God ignoring me was him talking to me. And that led me out of where I was at on the path to having, I guess, what you call semi-normal life.
That's beautiful. I'm trying to not cry. I'm just like, that's amazing. It's, I got nothing. That's
Look,
just beautiful how you're expressing and how you're just, how God is that small, still voice, and we can't always hear him.
Look, the book is really about this transformation that took place. There's 13 chapters, stories, biblical truth, and a song in it. I would like, I tell that story to people and they think, oh, what faith he has or whatever. There's times still, I'm a struggling human being like anyone else. And I went through some things about a month ago. It's like, where are you? I think we question sometimes. There's another little thing. It's a very small story on this one. There's a place here in Nashville, has a small lake, and it's a protected little wildlife reserve. And one of these times when I was, screaming, where are you, God? Where are you, God? And I was walking along. About that time, this little small breeze whisked across my face. And I felt it was God saying I was there. A lot of people say, oh, you're imagining it and all that kind of thing. Let them. I don't care. At that moment, I knew he was there. And I think sometimes we just need to be a little more aware. We're going to go through a trial. There's no way around it. He said, in this world, you will have troubles. We just hold on and we keep, for me, if there is no God, if his son doesn't exist, then why in the world am I here? It has no meaning.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
No, and I appreciate that, because I've tried to go down that rabbit hole of thinking like somebody that doesn't believe that there's God, and I'm like, I got so many dangerous thoughts that I'm like, no wonder why there is God, because he makes it so you don't have all of those dangerous, horrible thoughts in our head that can take over. And I'm like, just that little bit, I'm like, there is God. And so I very much appreciate, like what you said, like even like the wind, because he's there. He's always listening.
Yeah, most of the time when I talk to people, I tell them that I'm a follower of Jesus. I don't say I'm a Christian. I'm not embarrassed about it, but I say that because sinners inside the church, and some people have have labeled themselves Christians, have gone out fighting over things like whether you dunk or sprinkle, whether or not the wine is real or if it represents, should it be wine or grape juice. And that's not what it's about. For me, it's, I am a follower of Jesus, an imperfect, sinful follower of Jesus. And I want to make sure that I identify and tell people that is the way. And I don't know how else to express it except that. And they want to look at me, they'll see someone who's a sinner, flat out, and ask my wife. I am a sinner, but I keep following and doing my best to do what I feel like I'm supposed to do.
No, I appreciate that, because I know there's a lot of times myself, I'm just like, Lord knows I could do better, and I'm like, I'm working on it. And that's where I've really come to that realization, like when I mentioned earlier about like that pedestal of how so many people put another human up on that pedestal, and it's like, they're just like us. They really truly are, like at the core. And it's like when you said about for the follower of Jesus, I'm very much the same. Like I'm in my Bible, I'm reading my Bible. In fact, people don't want to know me. Even my own children. No, if mama hasn't had my time with God, don't even talk to me. You don't want to know me, because I'm like, I need my time. I just need to get my mind right first.
I get it. I have my morning devotionals, and it's hard to explain, but it at least gets my day started right. Hopefully I can keep it with me throughout the day.
And I appreciate that too, to be knowing that as well. And so how did you know that you were on this right path in your life?
I don't know if I ever knew I was on the right path. Every day I'm forced to make choices and decisions. I have temptations like anyone else. And I think, temptations, you start thinking about them. And the more you think about it, in Proverbs, it talks about, that you have to control your mind. And one of the ways you do that is you can let it focus on something and obsess with it or whatever until it takes fruition, or you can change your thoughts and direct them someplace else. There's different ways you can do that. For me, one of my best ways is going for a walk in this place where there's this small lake. And then my daily devotionals at least get my day started right. And throughout the day, I might have a memory of it or it'll pop in. It's amazing how many times what I've read that day applies to what I just went through, or it applies to what I'm going to go through.
I'm glad that you said about for like what you're going to go through. That's where I've really been finding where God's been leading me through is I'm starting to catch on after about 2 years later here. I'm starting to catch on where God is showing me right beforehand what I'm going to be going through so I can prepare a little bit. And I think that helps because I'm like, it's taken 2 years for me to catch on that that's what God's been showing me ahead of time in that. So I appreciate that very much. It's amazing how God puts different people in our lives to help us go to like that next level, to get to where we want to be able to go. And it sounded like when you were dealing with your heart there, you said is it back in 1983, and then I was thinking about the timeline, like wasn't that around that same time that you were meeting Garth as well?
87.
87, okay.
Yeah, I met Garth. Well, you'd know the story. And when I left Nashville, so I moved there originally in 83, and I left in 92. And the only reason I left was to take care of my family. And I have regrets about that, but I think God had a hand of where I needed to be at the time. I always want to make sure that I don't, Garth and I don't hang out all the time. As a matter of fact, we don't hang out really at all. My contact with him is through text and email, and he's always been very kind, very supportive. I know that if something happened to me that where I absolutely needed someone, that he'd be there. The relationship is really just, I think one time he just put about it, we know each other's heart. And I know that, and he knows that I'm there. I can't imagine why he would need me, but I'm there for him. And the same, I think, the other way around. And what I want to make sure is, here's something I'd like to share too. So I go out with my book, and I feel like my purpose in life now is to witness through my book, my music. So I'll do these presentations, I call them. You can call them a show or whatever. And usually my very first line I say is, I'm a songwriter from Nashville, Tennessee, who's written with Garth Brooks and have a gold record with Gary Allan. And all of a sudden people perk up. And I will say, isn't it a shame that if I said I'm a Christian, I do not get the same attention? The name Garth Brooks, all of a sudden I'm important. But if I say I'm a follower of Jesus, it's just... And so that kind of, for me, puts the focus on what is this life about? Where are we putting our priorities? And I'd be lying if I said I don't want to be the guy out in front, famous and everyone thinking I'm cool and all that. But that is not what I was put here for. And I look for places. I am not a preacher. I am not a reverend. I'm not anything like that. I am a witness. I witness to what I experience, and that is what we are all called to do, is to witness. And my story may be the one that affects you, or your story may be the one that affects someone else. But we witness to what we've gone through, what we experienced, and that is our testimony.
It very much is. And I'm glad that you had brought that up too, because that's one of the things that I've ironically been reading in the Bible last 2 days now in a row is like, where are we putting our priorities? Are we putting it on man or are we putting it on God? Because essentially that's where I'm like, the people that are putting people on pedestals is they're idolizing them. And that's one of the very first commandments is not to do that.
Yeah,
Shall have
I
no
get
other
it.
gods before us, well, before God.
You know, I've done a lot of these podcasts, and you know, some of them have an audience of 50 to 100, some of them, you know, 20 to 30,000. One says they had over 100,000, and they all, it doesn't matter the size of the audience for me. If it's just one person there and that's what I'm supposed to be doing, then that's what I'll do. We all want to be, I think there's something in us that wants to be known, to feel like we're important. You never know what corner of the world you're going to change just by, I make a game right now. I started this maybe 6 months ago. And like if I go to the grocery store and I walk down the aisle, pretty much everyone I say, hey, how you doing? Or excuse me, or oh, isn't that a great brand? I love this. Anything. And it's a shock for people that anyone would speak to them in the store. It's a game that I've made up. And I personally feel, and I'm not trying to draw attention to myself that I'm this wonderful person. I'm saying I personally feel like at least for a moment that day, that person felt like they weren't just a nobody, that they felt important, that someone cared about them. Even just a hello, you never know what'll make a difference.
Very, very, very true. So one of the things I do want to ask is, before we close our show here today, where or how can our audience get in contact with you? What's going to be the best way?
I would ask that people would, as far as what I'm here for, is my book. You can find it in two places, well, pretty much everywhere, but the most common ones are Amazon.com or my website, Kent Maxson, Maxson.com. And I like it if they would look and consider purchasing the book and the music. As far as other ways you can follow me, you know, I am on Facebook, I am on Spotify, I'm all these other ways. I don't have a huge following just because I'm a songwriter and no one's heard of me, except for, you know, you wrote with Garth Brooks. It's so interesting how people's view of you changes just with that name. And I'm using it shamelessly to try to get my message out there. I feel my mission now, my purpose in life right now is to be a witness. Hopefully it'll make a difference in at least one person's life.
And that's beautiful. And that's the main point too. So I want to make sure that our audience make sure to share, subscribe, and like and share this podcast, Healing for the Soul, with everyone you know. And I encourage you to follow myself, Robin Stoltman, on social media, as well as my guest, Kent Maxson, as well. So thank you so much for your time and your energy while listening to today's podcast.
That's all for now, folks. Make sure you subscribe. Tap that follow button. Subscribe. Quack, quack. Bye-bye. Well, next time. Now you got it.